The human general's voice boomed through the grand chamber of squabbling aliens, revealing a horrifying truth that would forever alter the galactic balance of power. Galen's blue skin flushed with rage as he slammed a fist on the ornate table. The Bajoran diplomat shouted over the din of arguing extraterrestrials. A reptilian creature with gleaming scales hissed in disapproval. "You would let those primitives onto this council. Their kind fight like rabid beasts. Who knows when they will turn on us?" "Humanity's past stays in the past," Galen said. "All that matters is they answered our call and honored our alliance. They have earned a seat here." Suddenly, the immense double doors swung open. An armored human strode in, his very presence silencing the alien din. Medals clinked on the man's chest. His face was grizzled and stern. "General Benjamin Johnson, United Earth Space Forces," he said in a gravelly voice. "Galen, council members, I come with a dire warning. The galaxy faces an existential threat, one that would have already conquered you if not for the blood of human soldiers." Galen gestured to the central podium. "General, the floor is yours. Tell us of this danger that imperils us all." Johnson marched to the stage, his expression grim. The fate of trillions rested on his shoulders. Every human, every alien, would perish in the looming hellfire if his words failed to unite the divided council. Humanity's secret war was about to explode into the light. General Johnson began, his eyes haunted by the memory. It was a few months ago. A remote human colony far from Earth was suddenly attacked by an unknown alien race. They called themselves the Zargons. They were technologically advanced and utterly ruthless. The general's fists clenched. The Galactic Council debated for days about how to respond. They were mired in bureaucracy and political infighting. While they argued, the colony burned. Galen shook his head in disgust. The Council's inaction was shameful. "It was the humans who acted first," Johnson continued. "We dispatched a fleet of our most advanced warships to confront the Zargons. When we arrived, we found ourselves facing a much larger and more powerful Zargon armada." The general's voice grew fierce with pride. "But despite being outgunned and outnumbered, our ships fought with incredible bravery and tactical brilliance. We used unorthodox strategies and daring maneuvers to outflank and outfight the enemy." As Johnson spoke, the council chamber was silent. The alien representatives hung on his every word. Galen listened intently, his admiration for the humans growing with each passing moment. "The battle was fierce," Johnson said. "We took heavy losses, but in the end we drove the Zargons back. We saved what was left of the colony, and we showed the galaxy that humanity will never stand by while innocents are slaughtered." Johnson paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. The chamber was deathly quiet, the alien representatives stunned into silence. Then he spoke again, his voice low and grave. "But that's not the worst of it," he said. "When we analyzed the data from the Kelthar staging ground, we discovered something even more terrifying. The Kelthar weren't just planning to invade the galaxy, they were planning to exterminate all other forms of life." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber. Galen leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Exterminate? What do you mean?" Johnson's eyes were haunted. "The Kelthar believe that they are the only species worthy of existence. They see all other races as inferior, as vermin to be wiped out. Their goal is nothing less than the complete annihilation of all non-Kelthar life in the galaxy." The chamber erupted into pandemonium. Representatives shouted questions and accusations, their voices blending into a cacophony of fear and anger. Galen banged his fist on the table, trying to restore order. "Silence," he bellowed. "Let the general speak." Gradually the noise died down. All eyes turned back to Johnson, who stood tall and resolute at the podium. "We knew then that we had no choice," he said. "The Kelthar had to be stopped no matter the cost. We couldn't wait for the council to debate and deliberate. We had to act." Johnson's voice grew fiercer, more impassioned. "So we did. The human fleet launched a series of daring raids on Kelthar staging grounds and supply lines. We disrupted their invasion plans, bought ourselves some time, but we knew it wasn't enough." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. The Kelthar are still out there, still planning their genocide, and they won't stop until every last one of us is dead. Galen stood up, his face grim. "What do you propose, General?" Johnson's answer was simple and direct. An alliance. Humanity can't face this threat alone. We need the strength of the entire galaxy behind us. We need to stand together, to fight as one. He held out his hand, an offer and a challenge. Will you join us? Will you fight for the survival of your species, of all species? Or will you sit back and watch as the Kelthar burn the galaxy to ashes? The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the representatives stood up. Galen was the first to take Johnson's hand, his grip firm and resolute. "The Bajoran people stand with humanity," he said. "We will fight." Other representatives followed suit, pledging their support and their fleets to the cause. Johnson watched as the galaxy united before his eyes, a sense of hope and determination rising in his chest. They would fight, they would resist, and they would never surrender. Not until the Kelthar were defeated and the galaxy was safe once more. As the applause died down, Johnson spoke again, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. "We knew we had to act fast. The Kelthar were preparing for a full-scale invasion, and we were the only ones who could stop them. So we came up with a plan." He paused, his eyes distant. "It was a desperate gamble. Our fleet was badly damaged and we were outnumbered 100 to 1, but we had one advantage: stealth." Galen leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Stealth? How?" "Our ships were equipped with advanced cloaking technology," Johnson explained. "We could slip past their defenses undetected, and that's exactly what we did." He went on, describing how the human fleet had launched a daring raid on the Kelthar staging ground. Using a combination of stealth and electronic warfare, they had managed to penetrate the enemy's defenses and strike at the heart of their command structure. "It was chaos," Johnson said. "Our Marines stormed the Kelthar flagship, engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat with their warriors. I led the final assault myself, battling my way to the bridge." His voice grew heavy with emotion. "I confronted the Kelthar Supreme Commander in single combat. It was the hardest fight of my life, but in the end I prevailed. The commander lay dead at my feet, and the Kelthar forces retreated in disarray." Galen shook his head in amazement. "Incredible," he breathed. "And your fleet?" "Battered but unbowed," Johnson replied. "We had bought the galaxy precious time to prepare for the coming war, but the cost was high. Many brave men and women gave their lives that day." He looked around the chamber, his gaze fierce. "But their sacrifice was not in vain. We showed the Kelthar that we would not go quietly into the night, that we would fight no matter the odds." The alien representatives were silent, stunned by the audacity and bravery of the human warriors. Galen rose to his feet, his eyes shining with admiration. "The Bajoran people owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid," he said solemnly. "You have shown us the true meaning of courage and sacrifice." One by one the other councillors rose, their applause building to a crescendo. Johnson stood tall and proud, his heart swelling with pride for his fellow soldiers. But even as the applause washed over him, he knew that the fight was far from over. The Kelthar would return, stronger and more determined than ever, and when they did, humanity would be ready. As the thunderous applause from the alien councillors faded, Johnson's face grew grim. He leaned into the microphone, his voice grave. "While our victory against the Kelthar at their staging ground was significant, it was merely the opening salvo in a much greater war. The Kelthar threat is far more insidious than we realized." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Johnson continued, "Our intelligence has uncovered a disturbing truth. The Kelthar have been secretly infiltrating the governments and institutions of numerous alien civilizations, including those represented here. They are using advanced mind control technology to subvert key leaders, sowing discord and confusion." The murmurs turned to shouts of disbelief and outrage. An insectoid representative stood, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Preposterous! How dare you accuse us of being compromised?" A feline counselor hissed, her fur bristling. "Where is your proof, human? These are baseless allegations." Johnson remained steadfast in the face of the uproar. Galen rose to his feet, his voice booming across the chamber. "Silence. Let the general speak. I have fought alongside this man, and I vouch for his integrity and the veracity of his claims." The tumult quieted, but the tension remained palpable. Johnson reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device. "This contains undeniable evidence of the Kelthar's infiltration." He activated the device, and a holographic display burst to life above the council table. It showed an intricate web of connections, linking various alien representatives to a network of Kelthar agents. Gasps echoed through the chamber, as councillors saw their own faces amongst the compromised. The display shifted, revealing the location of a hidden Kelthar base embedded in a nearby asteroid field. This secret base is the heart of their mind control operations. It is where they are developing and refining this insidious technology, Johnson explained, his face illuminated by the holographic glow. The chamber erupted into heated debate, accusations flying between representatives. Some called for immediate action, others for caution and further investigation. Through the chaos, Galen's voice cut like a knife. "Enough. It is clear that the Kelthar have been manipulating us, stoking our distrust and divisions. This council has been compromised, just as the general warned." He turned to Johnson, his expression resolute. "What do you propose, General? What is humanity's plan to counter this threat?" Johnson stood tall, his eyes hard as steel. "We have already begun. Our fleet is mobilizing, preparing to strike at the heart of the Kelthar's operations. But we cannot do this alone. We need the full might of the galactic community behind us." He looked out over the council, his gaze challenging. "I ask you now, councillors, will you stand with us? Will you fight for the freedom and sovereignty of your people? Or will you allow the Kelthar to pull your strings, to turn you into puppets while they conquer us all?" The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. The fate of the galaxy balanced on a knife's edge, poised between unity and annihilation. In that pregnant pause, a new voice spoke up from the chamber doors. "The Krellian Empire stands with humanity." All eyes turned as the Krellian ambassador strode into the room, his ceremonial armor glinting in the light. "We have seen the evidence, and we will not bow to the Kelthar's machinations. Our fleets are yours to command, General." A ripple of assent spread through the chamber, the representatives standing one by one in solidarity. Galen turned to Johnson, a fierce grin splitting his face. "It seems you have your answer, General. The galaxy united, ready to face this threat head-on." Johnson nodded, a glimmer of hope kindling in his battle-worn eyes. "Then let us begin. We have a war to win, and a galaxy to save." He turned back to the holographic display, enlarging the schematic of the Kelthar base. "Here is what we know about their defenses." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other, some demanding immediate retaliation against the Kelthar base, others calling for restraint and further deliberation. "We must strike now," bellowed the Krellian ambassador, slamming his fist on the table. "Every moment we waste, the Kelthar grow stronger." "And risk falling into their trap," countered the feline councillor, her tail lashing. "The general is right, we cannot afford a reckless assault." Johnson raised his hands, his voice cutting through the din. "I understand your anger and your fear, but a direct attack is exactly what the Kelthar expect. We need to be smarter than that." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I propose a covert operation. A small team led by our best special forces, supported by our most trusted allies. We infiltrate the base, gather intel on their plans, and sabotage their mind control tech." Galen stood, his blue skin flushed with determination. "I volunteer for this mission. My knowledge of the asteroid field, my contacts in the Bajoran resistance, they could be invaluable." Johnson appraised the Bajoran, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "I would be honored to have you on the team, Galen." As the council debated the merits of Johnson's plan, a sudden commotion erupted outside the chamber. The doors burst open, and a group of armed aliens stormed in, led by a member of the council itself. "General Johnson!" the lead alien shouted, his voice tinged with an unnatural resonance. "You are under arrest for treason against this council." Johnson's eyes narrowed. He recognized the telltale signs of Kelthar mind control. These aliens would stop at nothing to prevent his mission. He slowly raised his hands, his voice calm and steady. "Counselor, you are not yourself. The Kelthar are controlling you. Fight it." The counselor's face twitched, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. But the moment passed and he raised his weapon, aiming it squarely at Johnson's chest. "Surrender, General, or face the consequences." A tense standoff ensued, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Johnson knew that the next few moments would decide the course of the war and the future of every species in the room. In a shocking twist, Johnson held up his hand, a knowing smile on his face. "Stand down," he ordered calmly. The council members looked at Johnson in confusion, but the human soldiers disguised as security personnel nodded, their hands moving to their weapons. In a blur of motion, they drew their sidearms, firing precise shots that struck the mind-controlled aliens with crackling bolts of energy. The possessed counselors convulsed as the stun rounds overloaded their nervous systems, dropping them to the floor in twitching heaps. The human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, securing the unconscious aliens with restraints. Johnson turned to the stunned council, his expression grim. "I had a feeling the Kelthar might try something like this. That's why I had my best men posing as your security detail." Galen looked at Johnson with newfound respect. "You anticipated their move. Impressive." Johnson shook his head. "It's what any good commander would do. Always have a contingency plan." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each counselor. "But this only buys us a little time. The Kelthar will regroup and strike again." He walked back to the central podium, his posture straightening. "The only way to stop them is to take the fight to their doorstep. We need to hit them hard and fast, before they have a chance to recover." Johnson brought up a holographic display of a nearby star system. "My intel suggests the Kelthar have a major outpost here, on the fourth moon of Zathras Prime. It's a key resupply and staging area for their forces." He zoomed in on the moon, highlighting a heavily fortified installation. "I propose a two-pronged assault. A covert team led by myself and Galen will infiltrate the secret base and sabotage their mind control tech. Meanwhile, a fleet of human ships will launch a diversionary attack on the outpost, drawing their forces away from the base." Murmurs of concern rippled through the council. A reptilian counselor hissed, "A bold plan, General, but what of our own forces? You expect us to commit our ships to this risky venture?" Johnson leaned forward, his eyes hard. "I expect you to fight for your freedom, for your right to exist. The Kelthar won't stop until every last one of you is under their thrall or dead." Garland stood, his voice ringing out. "The Bajoran people have suffered under the Kelthar's boot for too long. We will gladly join this fight." He looked around the room, his gaze challenging. "And I believe others will too once they see the humans leading the charge." A tense silence fell over the council as each representative weighed the risks and rewards of Johnson's audacious plan. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Just as Johnson and Jinkar seemed to reach a tenuous agreement, the chamber doors burst open with a resounding boom. All eyes turned to the imposing figure striding into the room, his presence commanding instant attention. Admiral Jinkar, the Supreme Commander of the Galactic Council's military forces, cut an impressive figure in his gleaming black armor. His species, the Vorkarians, were renowned as some of the fiercest warriors in the known universe. Jinkar's steely gaze swept the room, finally settling on Johnson with an intensity that could melt hull plating. "General Johnson," Jinkar said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber, "I have heard much about you and your exploits, but I must question the wisdom of entrusting such a critical mission to human hands alone." Johnson met the Admiral's gaze unflinchingly. "With all due respect, Admiral, My people have proven themselves time and again in the fight against the Kelthar. We have the experience and the expertise to get this done. Galen stepped forward, his blue skin flushing with anger. The humans have done more to combat the Kelthar threat than any other race, including your own, Admiral. They deserve our trust and our support. Shinkar rounded on Galen, his eyes narrowing. You would take their side, Bajoran? Have you forgotten how long your people suffered under the Kelthar's boot, while the Council did nothing? Johnson held up a hand, his voice calm but firm. Enough, we're all on the same side here. The Kelthar are the enemy, not each other. He turned to Shinkar, his expression resolute. Admiral, I understand your reservations, but the fact is my people have faced the Kelthar in battle. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, and we have the technology and the training to exploit them. Shinkar crossed his arms, unconvinced. And what of the Council's forces? Are we to sit idly by while you humans take all the glory? Johnson shook his head. Not at all. We'll need all the help we can get. But this operation requires a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, a small elite team with specialized skills. The debate grew heated, voices rising as each side pressed their case. But before a resolution could be reached, Galen's communicator chimed urgently. The Bajoran's face paled as he read the incoming message. General Admiral, he said, his voice grave, I've just received word from my contacts in the Resistance. The Kelthar are planning an imminent attack on the Council headquarters, using a fleet of mind-controlled ships and soldiers. The room fell silent, the weight of Galen's words sinking in. Johnson turned to Shinkar, his expression grim. Admiral, we're out of time. The only way to stop this attack is to launch our operation immediately, while simultaneously deploying the Council's forces to defend against the incoming fleet. Shinkar hesitated, his pride warring with the undeniable logic of Johnson's argument. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Very well, General. I still have my doubts, but it seems we have little choice. The Council fleet will mobilize to defend headquarters, and your operation has my support. With the Council's backing secured, Johnson and Galen immediately began to coordinate their respective forces. There was no time to lose. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. As Johnson and Shinkar huddled over a holographic display of the Kelthar base, Galen couldn't help but marvel at the humans' composure under pressure. Despite the immense stakes and the Admiral's initial hostility, Johnson had remained calm and focused, his arguments measured and persuasive. It was a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit, Galen thought. In the face of an implacable enemy, they had not only survived but thrived, their courage and ingenuity shining like a beacon in the darkness. And now, with the full might of the Galactic Council behind them, they had a real chance to strike a decisive blow against the Kelthar, to end their insidious threat once and for all. As he watched Johnson and Shinkar pore over the details of their respective missions, Galen felt a surge of hope and determination. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but with humanity leading the charge, he knew they would prevail. They had to. The alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The die was cast, the pieces in motion. The greatest battle in the history of the galaxy was about to begin, and at its forefront stood a small, seemingly insignificant species from a distant blue world. A species called humanity. As the Council chamber burst into a flurry of activity, Johnson gathered his strike team. Galen stood at his side, his blue skin flushed with anticipation. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. The small group boarded a sleek black ship, its hull shimmering with advanced stealth tech. Johnson took the controls as Galen input coordinates into the navigation system, guiding them towards the treacherous asteroid field that concealed the Kelthar base. Asteroids loomed in the view screen, jagged and menacing. Johnson's hands flew over the controls, weaving the ship through the deadly maze with preternatural skill. Galen watched in awe, marveling at the humans' mastery of the craft. As they neared the base, Johnson killed the engines, letting the ship drift silently towards an airlock. The team donned their gear, checking weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. The airlock hissed open, and they slipped inside, shadows in the dim light. Galen took point, his knowledge of the base's layout guiding them through twisting corridors. Suddenly an alarm blared. Kelthar guards poured into the hallway, energy weapons blazing. Johnson and his team reacted instantly, diving for cover and returning fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the humans and Kelthar clashed. Johnson's team fought with brutal efficiency, their advanced weapons and tactics overpowering the guards. Galen spotted a side passage and signaled to Johnson. They fell back, leapfrogging from cover to cover as Galen led them deeper into the base. As they rounded a corner, they stumbled upon a horrific sight. Row upon row of holding cells, each containing a different alien species. Many were barely alive, their bodies wasted and minds broken by the Kelthar's experiments. In one cell they found a figure they recognized, a high-ranking council member who had disappeared months ago. The alien's once proud form was emaciated, its eyes haunted. The Kelthar, the council member rasped, its voice barely a whisper. Their plan, not just conquest, enslavement, all life, fuel for their empire. Johnson's jaw tightened as the full horror of the Kelthar's ambition hit him. Galen's fists clenched, rage and revulsion warring on his face. Plant the charges, he ordered, his voice cold as the void. We end this here and now. The team split up, each taking a section of the base. They worked quickly, setting the explosives at key structural points. As they did, Johnson's mind raced, calculating the blast radius, the chain reaction that would reduce the base to atoms. They regrouped at the airlock, charges set and timers ticking down. Johnson ushered his team aboard the waiting ship, then turned to Galen. The council member... Johnson nodded grimly, then sealed the airlock. As the ship pulled away, gaining speed and distance, the base erupted behind them, a miniature sun blooming in the void. The shockwave buffeted the ship, but Johnson held it steady, his eyes fixed on the expanding fireball. It was done. The Kelthar's research, their mind control tech, their heinous experiments, all consumed in the cleansing fire. But even as relief washed over him, Johnson knew this was only the beginning. The real battle still lay ahead, and humanity, as always, would be on the front lines. As Johnson and his team raced through the twisting corridors of the Kelthar base, the sound of pursuing footsteps grew louder. Energy bolts sizzled past their heads, scorching the walls. The Kelthar warriors were closing in, their weapons spitting deadly fire. Galen glanced over his shoulder, his blue skin slick with sweat. They're gaining on us, he panted. We need to buy more time. Johnson nodded grimly. Keep moving, he ordered. I'll hold them off. But Galen shook his head. No, General. You're needed to lead the fight against the Kelthar. I'll stay behind, give you a chance to escape. Johnson opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Galen's eyes stopped him. He saw the determination there, the unwavering resolve of a true warrior. It's been an honor, Galen, Johnson said, clasping the Bajoran's hand. Galen smiled. The honor was mine, General. Now go, finish this. With a final nod, Johnson turned and sprinted after the rest of the team. Behind him he heard the sound of Galen's weapon firing, the battle cries of the Kelthar as they engaged the lone Bajoran. Tears stung Johnson's eyes as he ran, but he blinked them away. There would be time to mourn later. Now he had a mission to complete. The team burst out of the base, just as a series of explosions ripped through the structure. The ground heaved beneath their feet as the charges they had planted detonated, reducing the Kelthar's stronghold to rubble. Johnson allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Kelthar's mind control technology, their twisted experiments, all of it was gone, destroyed in the cleansing fire. But the battle was far from over. High above the planet, the Galactic Council's fleet clashed with the Kelthar armada. Ships tumbled and burned, their hulls ruptured by searing energy beams. The void was alight with the flash of explosions, the glare of shields straining under relentless assault. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Shinkar gripped the arms of his command chair, his face grim. The Kelthar's forces were vast, their ships seemingly endless. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Our shields are failing," an officer cried. "We can't hold them off much longer." But even as he spoke, he knew the battle was turning against them. The Kelthar's mind-controlled ships fought with a fearless, almost suicidal ferocity. They plunged headlong into the Council's formations, heedless of their own destruction. Suddenly, a cheer went up from the crew. Shinkar looked up to see a new wave of ships dropping out of warp, their hulls emblazoned with the insignia of the Bajoran fleet. Beside them flew the vessels of a dozen other races, all answering the call to arms. With renewed vigor, the Council's forces surged forward, the reinforcements adding their firepower to the fray. The tide of battle began to turn, the Kelthar's advance faltering under the onslaught. But the victory was hard won. Ships vanished in blossoms of flame, their crews consumed by the merciless void. The screams of the dying filled the comm channels, a haunting chorus of agony and despair. Just when all seemed lost, a small craft burst from the planet's atmosphere, rocketing towards the heart of the battle. It was Johnson's ship, the general and his team returning from their mission. "Admiral," Johnson's voice crackled over the comm, "we have vital intelligence on the Kelthar's command structure. Transmitting now." Shinkar's eyes widened as he studied the data streaming across his displays. The information Johnson had gathered was the key to unraveling the Kelthar's mind control network, to severing the bonds that enslaved their thralls. "All ships, new target," Shinkar barked. "Focus fire on the designated coordinates." The Council's fleet swung into action, their weapons converging on the Kelthar command ships. Under the relentless barrage, the enemy vessels crumpled and shattered, their mind control systems overloading in cascades of feedback. Across the battlefield, Kelthar ships went dark, their crews slumping over their consoles as the mental shackles that bound them were abruptly severed. Some surrendered while others fled, their will to fight extinguished. The battle was won, but the cost had been immense. The wreckage of countless ships drifted in the void, a grim testament to the sacrifices made, and in the aftermath, a darker truth was revealed. As the Council convened in the wake of the battle, the extent of the Kelthar's infiltration became clear. Trusted leaders, advisors, even members of the Council itself were unmasked as Kelthar agents, their minds long ago subverted by the enemy's insidious technology. The Council chambers erupted into chaos, accusations flying as the once unified body fractured along lines of suspicion and mistrust. Some called for the immediate removal of all compromised individuals, while others urged caution, warning of the dangers of a witch hunt. Amidst the turmoil, Johnson stood apart, his eyes haunted by the memory of Galen's sacrifice, of the countless lives lost in the battle against the Kelthar. He had fought for the freedom and sovereignty of the galaxy, but now he wondered if that unity could ever be restored. As he gazed out at the stars, Johnson knew that the fight against the Kelthar was far from over. They had struck a blow against the enemy, but the war would continue, and the future of the galaxy would depend on the strength and resilience of all its peoples, human and alien alike. For in the face of such darkness, only by standing together could they hope to prevail. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.